Wow, what an honor. Anytime I can stand in front of a group of veterans and tell my story, I'm honored. And I'm honored by you, I'm honored by the people who get to listen to this. I had worked diligently in putting together a speech on the Blinded Veterans Association, how we came about, some of our accomplishments, our activities, what we do for blinded veterans. But it was after I walked in the door here this morning, I had a request for somebody that heard me speak before about a story I told about a blinded veteran in Western North Carolina that I got involved with. And I decided to scrap all the efforts that I'd been putting in all week long, and my wife will tell you that I was staying up at night working on these things and worrying about it. And just put all that stuff aside and tell my story and how I got started with the BVA and what keeps me coming back. My blindness came about from an exposure to Agent Orange in 1968, my second tour in Vietnam. My CB battalion was in a little place called Phu Loc. We took Hill 44 and we turned it into a rock quarry to harvest the stone, to crush and try to keep Route 1 open going south, especially between Da Nang and Phu Bai. Well, it just so happened that Hill 44 is just below the DMZ and right next to the main route, Route 1, that the North Vietnamese were moving equipment and materials south on, and it was fairly well overgrown through the jungle, and Navy, Air Force, Marines, anybody that could fly a tanker was spraying it with Agent Orange to kill the foliage so we could bomb the heck out of it and try to stop some of those supplies from coming south. There were 5 of us that were in the quarry that day trying to do a site survey as to where to put the rock crusher and install it. Believe it or not, this was an electric-driven rock crusher. When I believe it was the Air Force that was spraying that day and got a wind shift, and a good portion of that load of Agent Orange came right over into our rock quarry. And as a result, I was one of those victims that wound up with multiple problems from Agent Orange. Amongst that was diabetes and diabetic retinopathy. And once it was diagnosed, it took about 4 months and my eyes were gone. This happened after my eyesight loss happened after I got out of service. So I did complete my 30 years before I retired. And from there, things went downhill sharp until I got some help. And a lot of the help I got came through the Blinded Veterans Association. I lost my eyesight in 1998 while I was living here in Raleigh. And I was working for the U.S. Department of Labor, had a second career going, was perfectly happy, had a nice home, a mortgage. Family was grown, just me and my wife. She was working, we were gainfully employed and having a good time. When all of this stuff came by and just absolutely kicked my feet right off from under me. And the ones of you who have lost your eyesight and later on in life, whether it be from injury, whether it be from chemical or disease, you know how depressing it can be. All of a sudden you can't drive. You can't do this, you can't do that. And four walls start moving in on you. And the depression starts setting in. And that happened to me. I was fortunate in that there was such an organization as the Blinded Veterans Association and the VA. And the VA sent me to blind rehabilitation in Augusta, Georgia, where I spent 3 months as an inpatient learning how to do things without being able to see them. Quite a challenge. And I thought I was under the gun for 3 months, but I walked out of there with a whole new lease on life. And it is emotional. The bad part of it is I live south of Raleigh in a small community, house on a cul-de-sac. And my wife was still working. And I made up my own mind that I would be better off moving back to my hometown in western North Carolina, where I had lots of relatives and lots of friends, at least a few. And it would be an easier way of life for me. I had gotten into the Blinded Veterans Association here in Durham at the Durham Hospital, and had become a part of the VIS support group, and I'll explain that later on. But at least once a week I would get a call from the VAS volunteer office, and the Blinded Veterans Association was manning that. And just to call and ask me how I was doing, am I getting what I need? Do I need anything? Could they do anything for me? And it was a friendly face who knew what I was going through that would call and make themselves available to me. When I moved back to western North Carolina, I was 250 miles away from that local phone call every day, every week. And I met a gentleman by the name of Gene Apple, who was also a blinded veteran. And we put our heads together and decided we wanted to start a chapter of the North Carolina regional group of the Blinded Veterans Association, and they're present here today. We went through all the steps that was required by the BVA in their charter, and we set up a group meeting for the, we call it the VIS support group, blinded veterans that meet once a quarter, once a month, depending on where you are, and get a lot of good information and sharing of ideas and fellowship through that group. And we voted to consider starting a chapter in western North Carolina. We organized a meeting in the day room at the Asheville VAMC and invited all blinded veterans, and there were over 200 of us, to come to that meeting at the hospital in Asheville. And I had people from the regional group at that time that came up, traveled up to Asheville to meet with us and explain to them what the BVA did, who they were, and how they came about. And my wife, Maureen, sitting over here, was helping us, taking down all the names, addresses, and contact numbers in case we needed to contact them again, enlisting people in the membership drive, and getting membership started for the BVA. And she came over and she got me from behind I was talking to another group. but I was standing up in front of the room. And she said, "There's someone I'd like for you to meet." So I walked over to the registration desk, and she said, "I'd like for you to meet Mr. Jim Burns. He's a blinded veteran, and he's not a member of the BVA and doesn't know much about it." So I just politely put my hand out to shake hands with him, and immediately someone, it may have been my wife, jerked my hand down and says, "Wait a minute, he's in a wheelchair." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you couldn't walk. I thought you were standing up." And his wife popped up and she says, "Oh no, he can't walk." I said, "Oh, what happened to his legs?" She said, "Oh, he's blind, you know. He can't walk." I said, "Well, I'm sorry." I said, "I'm blind also, and I do walk." And I said, "The way I get around is because I had good orientation and mobility training through the VA." And I said, "What we're going to talk about today will show you how you can get that training and at least get him mobile again and get things moving so he can go out, get out amongst his peers and his, daily life and do things for himself." "Oh, he can't do that." I said, "What do you mean he can't do that?" She said, "Well, he can't go anywhere like that. He's blind, you know." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I understand that." I said, "But we have a wonderful blind rehabilitation center in Augusta, Georgia. We've got one in Birmingham. And in fact, today we have over 13 inpatient blind rehabilitation centers across the country." And I said, "In reality, he can go to any one of them he wants to." But I said, "I went through Augusta and I recommend it highly." She said, "Oh, he couldn't travel down there. He's got no way of getting there." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I know he's blind." I said, "But they'll help you. They'll even give an escort to him, or they'll send a vehicle for him if they need to. But if he needs the training, then they'll get the training for him. And it won't cost you anything." She said, "But who would take care of him?" I said, "Well, he would be an inpatient." She said, "But he can't do that." I said, "Why not?" She said, "Well, he can't even dress himself." And I'm starting to wonder now, is this guy blind or is he an invalid? And she said, he's blind. He just can't do those things." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I understand that." But I said, "That's what the VA is for. That's what the Blinded Veterans Association is for, is to help him learn to do those." Well, I just don't see how he can do that. It was clearly a case of a wife who had seen her husband hurt, and she was going to take care of him come heck or high water. And she wasn't going to let anybody take that job away from her. That was her responsibility, and she was going to do it to the fullest. James Burns was going to sit down in his chair every morning. She was going to feed him. She was going to shave him. She was going to wash him. She was going to dress him. And he just sat there and grinned and took it. Now, he wasn't just being lazy. He was enjoying the attention. A lot of people could get spoiled to a lifetime like that. But it doesn't do much for your ego. Well, we went through the meeting. We explained our program, what we intended to do, and we gave everybody a 30-day notice that brought them back in a month's time so they could take all the information and absorb it and think about it, pray about it, whatever it took, and come back a month later and vote on it, whether we wanted to organize ourselves or not. In 1 month, we came back to the multipurpose room in the hospital, and we took a vote, and overwhelmingly decided we wanted to start a chapter in Western North Carolina. And Mr. Burns and his wife and daughter were there also. And his daughter is the one that came up to me and said, "Mr. Parker says, I think my daddy wants to go to that blind rehab center." And I said, "That's great." I said, "We'll get with the VIS coordinator at the hospital and we'll fill out the paperwork." And I said, "This by no means obligates you to do anything. However, if you want to go, we have to make a reservation for you, so they'll have a bed ready for you when you get there. And if you decide you don't want to go, there's no foul. There's always a short list, people standing in line waiting to go, and that's how I got there. Somebody canceled out at the last minute, opened the bed up, and I took it. And Jim Burns' wife was just livid. She did not want him to go. But we filled out the paperwork, sent it in, he was approved.